Imagine with me this scenario. You're 16 years old. You're a Batman super fan, and you're standing in front, or at least virtually, of the movie executive who is the reason that every Batman film and animated feature has been produced since 1989. And he's just told you that you understand Batman perfectly. This is exactly what you're about to hear in this conversation between BB Nate and the living legend Michael Usland. This is Tatooine Sons.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody listen to that.
Welcome to Tatooine Sons, the only fan podcast to name an official Star Wars creature and to be endorsed by the writer and the director of The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson. We believe that pop culture is the mythology of this generation, that there is a story, it is written on our souls, and that these myths speak to that story. And that is why we are honored to be joined on this very special episode by a man who honestly needs no introduction, Michael Usland. It's impossible to fully describe the debt that the modern day comic book nerd owes to Michael E. Usland. Michael Usland is the executive producer of every Batman feature film from Batman in 1989 to The Batman in 2022, and then every animated feature and show in between. He won an Emmy Award for TV's Where on Earth Is Carmen Sandiego, and he even taught the world's first accredited college course on comic books. He's the author of Batman's Batman, a memoir from Hollywood, land of Bilk and money, and The Boy Who Loved Batman, a memoir. If you're a regular listener to Tatooine Sons, you know what a pinch yourself moment this is for BB Nate, our resident comic book nerd and Batman aficionado. While Nathan tried to describe for me what he was feeling on the morning of the interview, he said that it's as big for him as it would be for me to be interviewing Mark Hamill. Nate knew that Mr. Uslan, as he insists on calling him, even in the casual off-the-record conversations that we've had, is always asked about who his favorite Batman is. So BB Nate decided to ask about the Joker. Here's what Michael had to say.
One of probably the most often question I'm asked whenever I speak, whether at a Comic-Con, a university, or a business conference, is, who is the one true Batman, Michael? There have been so many different iterations. And the same question is applicable to the Joker. So regarding the Joker, I had a conversation with Mark Hamill a while ago. And I said, Mark, if anyone ever decides to build Mount Rushmore for the Joker, the heads that are going to be carved on that mountain will be Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger, Joaquin Phoenix, and you. I said, because you are the definitive voice of the Joker, and which he has been. It's incredible to think that the Joker, who inarguably is the greatest supervillain ever created, and I saw one poll recently where he was listed in the top 3 all-time cinema villains.
Oh, wow.
With Darth Vader and the Wicked Witch of the West. Which is pretty incredible to think about that as well. And I tie the two characters together because when people ask me, who is the one true Batman? I said, it's the easiest question in the world to answer. It is the Batman that you were first introduced to when you were 8 or 12 or 16 or however. Whether it was a comic book or a cartoon, a movie or a game, that becomes your true Batman. And because Batman is human and has no superpowers, I always say that his greatest superpower is his humanity. We all get to identify really strongly with him in a way we can't quite do it with the Hulk or Superman. And in doing so, we project ourselves onto Batman. We project our own philosophies onto Batman. And I've found out, especially around the time of Dark Knight, our own politics, when everyone from Fox News was claiming the Dark Knight as their guy, and then everyone at MSNBC was claiming the Dark Knight as their guy, I realized that that was true. Well, the same thing is applicable to the Joker. When I was a kid growing up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the Batman was the Joker was the clown prince of crime. We were all living in a bit of a naive world, black and white, good versus evil. Everything was pretty clear. By the time, and Jack Nicholson really emulated that. He played a dark Joker who was indeed the clown prince of crime. By the time Chris Nolan came in to restore the darkness and dignity to Batman, the world had completely changed. We were living in a gray world. Our world post 9/11 was order versus chaos. And Chris attempted to try to convince the world that the Joker could be real today. And he did that with what I thought was the performance of a lifetime by Heath Ledger. Absolutely. And it was incredible. And it did convince us that the Joker could be a modern day terrorist, you know, someone who places no value on human life whatsoever. Chaos. And then Joaquin Phoenix comes in through the genius of Todd Phillips and gives a performance that, again, just like with previous Jokers, reflects the times in which we live. Mm-hmm. I always contend that cinema at its best is a mirror. And we're forced to hold it up and look deep inside it, warts and all, at what we're looking at. And the Joker there was a statement about a polarized country and world, a world in which we've all lost our civility, with people talking at each other instead of with each other, with society turning its back on issues like mental health, which is attached, obviously, to gun violence. And that was a scary, scary, dark, real interpretation of Joker. Well, the world that Matt Reeves is creating is also, in its genius, a reflection of our times. It is dark. You know, I think the reviews on the Batman movie have been running 95% positive. And in the ones that don't see it that way, they go, "Oh my God, this is so dark and dreary." And my response is, "Duh, it's Batman." Exactly. And that is the world. Yet, as dark and dreary as that might be, each movie ends up thematically being about hope. And that's the whole key to the whole thing. Exactly. So we don't know, as a world population, what Mr. Reeves is going to be weaving in the next part of his tale. But we can be sure that just as Christopher Nolan created what I believe to be one movie in 3 acts that is beautifully structured with beautiful character arcs and story arcs, and every setup has a payoff, every payoff has a great planted setup, just tied with a ribbon. It was magnificent in its structure. I think that Mr. Reeves is going to take us on an emotional roller coaster ride that will be authentic for everyone who has ever been a Batman fan. And I think we take that ride with the Joker. So that is the longest answer to a shortest question without actually exactly answering them.
No, that was great. I love hearing your thoughts. And the Dark Knight trilogy is fantastic. Christopher Nolan is and has always been my favorite director, and I love the Dark Knight trilogy so much. But there have been so many absolutely amazing Joker storylines in the comics, including Killing Joke, Death in the Family, and Batman White Knight. Now, which Joker storyline is your favorite and why?
I think it's a combination of two. The first one is Batman #1 that introduced the Joker and introduced him as a homicidal maniac. And it was a detective story. There was a clock ticking. People were dying. Batman and Commissioner Gordon had their relationship, which was not too unlike Sherlock Holmes and Lestrade. So much of that, it defined everything. And, I was very dear friends with Jerry Robinson, who co-created the Joker. Jerry was a friend. Jerry was a mentor. Jerry gave me all the details, all the thoughts and philosophies behind it all. I'm also one of two people, I believe, who are still standing on the planet Earth who met Bill Finger.
Oh, wow.
And I met Bill when I was 13 and when I was 14 years old. And Bill told me how Batman was created. And, I take all of that with me. And the fact that Joker was created by Jerry Robinson and Bill Finger with the approval of Bob Kane, that first Joker story is an important part of my heart and soul as a Batman fan, a Batman historian. The other one was courtesy of Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams, editor Julie Schwartz, and it's the Joker's 5-Way Revenge. Okay. It was the story in the 70s that brought the Joker back the way Batman had been brought back by that team to his darker roots, which was desperately needed post the Batman TV show when the comics were kind of down in the toilet and they needed to rebuild from the ground up again. The work that Denny and Neil did was incredible. So the Joker's 5-Way Revenge, the return to the darker, more maniacal, more homicidal Joker over the Clown Prince of Crime we had been seeing, that had a huge impact on me and on my career.
Yes, Mr. O'Neill was a genius, and he's done some amazing stuff with Batman. Now, in some of our conversations about the Batman, we've heard criticisms of Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne, suggesting he's too different from the flashy billionaire playboy so many are used to. I argue that Bruce Wayne is the true mask of Batman, and that this mask isn't fully developed yet in the Batman. Why do you think this version of Bruce Wayne feels so different from the ones we've seen in previous films?
Because you just nailed it on the head. You just got it right. You can't look at cast. I always tell my fellow fans this, and they know I am a fan. I was there as comic book fandom was being organized. I was at the first Comic-Con ever held on the planet Earth when I was a kid. 200 of us showed up at the first Comic-Con in a Fleabag hotel in downtown New York. And so they know I'm one of them. I'm not some Hollywood suit where some publicist is writing a cue card for me to spew. And so, I often get tossed out there, or I voluntarily put my head on the chopping block when the fans go crazy, just like they did. How could you have Mr. Mom play Batman, a stand-up comedian? Are you crazy? Oh my God, Uslan. Now, not only that, you've got the director of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. This is going to be the laughing stock comedy of the century. And it's like, I believe every fan has not only a right to criticize, but has an obligation to criticize once you see the movie.
Exactly.
So I say, don't look at the cast. Look at the filmmaker. That's the key. The filmmaker each time has a vision. And you hope that it's a filmmaker who understands, loves, and has a passion for a character, and then knows how to execute that vision. So Tim's vision, which was revolutionary and would change the comic book world, would change Hollywood forever, would change the world culture's perception of comic book superheroes and supervillains. His vision was that if you're going to do the first ever dark and serious feature film about a comic book superhero, you cannot have this movie be about Batman. Mm-hmm. It must be about Bruce Wayne. And you have to take a world of people who have never read a comic book in their lives to convince them this is possible, to suspend their disbelief. You have to make them believe in a Bruce Wayne who is so driven and obsessed to the point of being psychotic that they will buy the fact he will get into a bat costume and go out and fight a guy like the Joker. And when they saw the movie, they realized, oh my God, Keaton pulled it off. Keaton and Burton pulled it off. And then they wanted no other actor forever to play Batman. So lo and behold, we moved down a peg. Chris Nolan comes in and the fans go crazy, absolutely crazy. You guys are horrible people. You are hiring a gay cowboy to play the Joker. He is going to destroy this role for all eternity. Until you look at Chris Nolan's vision for what that Joker was. Somebody he wanted to make feel real based on the post 9/11 times. And then it makes sense. And then they see the movie, and then they never want anyone else to play the Joker for all time. Mm-hmm. Then it's announced that Ben Affleck is going to play Bruce Wayne. And oh my God, I got a call. It must have been 11:30 at night from somebody at Warner Brothers. They said like 70% of the internet is talking about this right now. And I think they're going to surround the studio with pitchforks and torches. You know, can you get out in front of this? And I put out word to the fans. I go, now, look at the filmmaker and see what the vision is. I said, you're talking about a Bruce Wayne in his mid-40s who's been done with this. He's bitter. He's frustrated. He doesn't want to be this anymore, and he's getting dragged back into it. So you have to see it from that perspective. Then we have Robert Pattinson. Oh my God, you are going to destroy the Batman franchise because blah, 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 yep. And you hit it right smack on the head. This is a young Bruce Wayne. This is a Bruce Wayne who's still getting his feet wet, who's still getting hurt, who's still tripping over his own feet. Did you see that moment on the top of the building where he had a jump and it was like, you had that moment? That's not the Dark Knight yet. No. It's an evolution. So where is he? And everybody can have their own opinion about it. In my opinion only, my personal opinion only, not any kind of official position, he is Batman. He is a scarred, emotionally distraught young man, probably with post-traumatic stress syndrome, having seen his parents slaughtered in front of his eyes on a city street when he was a kid. And he is Batman. There almost is no Bruce Wayne at this point in time. And it's going to be interesting to see the evolution of this man and see how over few pictures he evolves into the Dark Knight. He evolves into a Bruce Wayne image. How the Batmobile maybe will evolve, how everything will evolve. And think of the villains also. Many of them are young, starting out. Their personas have not really yet gotten to a mature point. There's still many choices they have to make before they actually define themselves. And I always believe in what Stan Lee told me. We were sitting having lunch one day at Nate Now's in Beverly Hills. And he said, Michael, the longest lasting and most popular superheroes are the ones who have had the greatest supervillains. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, it's the supervillains who define the superheroes. And I absolutely believe that as well.
Yes, it's great. Batman has such a great rogues gallery. Now, okay, so let me just ask you this. This is a very heated debate. I think it's been a debate ever since Batman has been a thing. Which is the real mask, Bruce Wayne or Batman?
Bruce Wayne.
I agree.
Bruce Wayne, in the aftermath of the killing of his parents, as he's sitting there over their bodies, that kid sacrifices his childhood. And in that moment, he makes a vow. And he said he's going to get the bad guy who did this. He's going to get all the bad guys, even if he has to walk through hell for the rest of his life in order to honor that commitment. And I believe, and I'm talking fanboy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody knows it's different. The producing thing's a different hat. As a fanboy, I had no doubt in my mind that at that moment, he said goodbye to Bruce Wayne and set out on a path to be what these events were turning him into.
Yeah, it's like the episode in Justice League Unlimited when they all get turned back into kids and Wonder Woman's asking him about what it was like to be a kid. And he says that he hasn't been a child since he was 8 years old, since he lost his parents. It's great. I love that whole show. It's amazing. And Bruce Timm is a genius. But, how excited are you about Michael Keaton donning the cowl again in The Flash?
I'm trying to think if there's any adjectives that can take this to a higher point, but I can't come up with any. This is incredible. This is absolutely a wonderful, wonderful thing. And to see how he nurtures Batgirl, Flash, whoever, and what his role in life will be. I go back many years ago, we were developing Batman Beyond as a live action movie. Oh, wow. And I always annoyed everybody at the studio because I never shut up about it. I said, that's a Clint Eastwood movie. Mm-hmm. Clint Eastwood in his late 70s with a cane, that's Bruce Wayne. It is. And then, oh my God, Michael Keaton at 70. It's so interesting. So interesting. Lots of choices to be made, lots of paths that might be followed. I think everybody who's ever been a fan of Batman will rejoice with this. And whichever way the ride should go.
After hearing Michael's thoughts on Michael Keaton in The Flash and how he connects those thoughts to his now shelved Batman Beyond live action film, BB Nate is convinced that we could see a lot more Michael Keaton in the future of the DCEU. But after some of the recent news regarding Ezra Miller over the last few days, I think we'll have to just wait and see how things settle down a bit. We'll get back to our conversation with Michael Uslan in just a minute. But before we do that, here is your chance to change the story that you're telling yourself by joining the fellowship that we've initiated around the Hero's Journal. We've begun a quest to better ourselves and our lives through this amazing tool that uses the power of stories and scientifically proven productivity techniques to help fans like us take control of the story that we tell ourselves. Remember this, changing your story takes small changes over a period of time. It's not giant moments of inspiration, it's the small, consistent actions. And the Hero's Journal provides a fun and powerful way of taking those steps. You can join our fellowship for free. I know some of you are already doing that. We're excited to see you engaging with this tool. Just head on over to theheroesjournal.co/pages/Tatooine Sons. Link is in the show notes to download a digital version of the first act of the Hero's Journal and begin your quest today. All right, one thing that BB Nate has convinced me of over the past several years is that the animated DC universe has some of the most compelling storytelling in the world today. So BB Nate asked Michael what animated Batman story is his favorite. Here's his answer.
It's Mask of the Phantasm, which I consider to be one of the greatest Batman stories ever told in the media, and it holds up beautifully today.
It does.
It gave us Mark Hamill as the Joker and Kevin Conroy as Batman. I think it's spectacular. On the animated series itself, it was the Mr. Freeze episodes. And
Heart of Ice is fantastic.
Yeah.
I love Heart of Ice.
And that's something that deserves future attention. It's really, really great. I love so many different episodes there. The ones that worked most for me were the ones that hit me on an emotional level. I can still remember to this day when they sent me the fine cut of On Leather Wings, the first one, to see what was happening. Just so exciting. And one of the sad things to me is that I don't think the brilliant people on the animation side get sufficient spotlight. I think they need additional recognition, and that's everyone. And I'm always afraid of leaving out too many people. But for example, Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, Alan Burnett, Eric Radomski, Andrea Romano, Kevin and Mark, and everybody who has voiced the characters. It's incredible. And now we're getting ready for the next animated series, which I think is going to have fans jumping up and down.
I cannot wait. The talent behind it is insane. I love it. The idea of Batman being a dark superhero is readily accepted now, but it was really the Dark Knight Returns comics and others that really started to solidify this idea. What was it like being a Batman fan when this dark version really started to take hold in the community?
Well, you have to go back and start with Julie Schwartz, the editor at DC, who was the editor of Batman, who set out on the path to restore what I always say, the darkness and dignity to Batman. And you look at the people that were involved in that, led by Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, but also Irv Novick, Frank Robbins, David Verne. I hate to leave anyone out, but so I'm just going to hold the list, right there for the moment. Oh, Jim Aparo, Ernie Chan. If we keep going, we'll spend the next hour spewing names. What they did in the 70s was just as important as The Dark Knight Returns was in 86. Dark Knight Returns, one of the reasons it's so seminal is because it was in the form of a graphic novel. And what that did is that got people to recognize it, hail it, read it, see it from the perspective of a book rather than as a funny book, as a comic book. And that was groundbreaking. That year between Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns shook up the world and made them understand that what we all call graphic storytelling had taken a much more sophisticated and mature turn, and that comic books were no longer simply for 8 to 12-year-old boys. And that was breakthrough, as was Contract with God by Will Eisner and American Splendor. There were so many great works, Mouse by Art Spiegelman. And these were all letting the world know also that comics were not synonymous with superheroes. That if you walked into a Barnes & Noble in that day, anything you saw on the bookshelves there, you could find that same genre somewhere in comics and graphic novels. War, westerns, mystery, romance, humor, science fiction, horror. It was all there. And to this day, I think most people are not aware that movies like The 300, Constantine, Road to Perdition, A History of Violence were all based on comics. So that was a huge jump forward. So I think you've got two periods there of 70s plus 86 that really turned the tide in terms of, and you've got to include, you can't just call it dark and serious. You also have to use sophisticated and mature as part of the evolution of how we got to where we are today.
I agree. I think the Black Label run and part of DC is helping with that as right now as well. I love it. All of your success in film and media is built off of your childhood love for comic books. If you could go back in time and give your 16-year-old self one piece of advice, knowing what you know now, what would you say to him?
Don't sweat about the girls finding out that you're a high school student who still reads and collects comic books, because one day they're going to be cool, and girls are going to be reading them, and girls are going to go to comic book movies, and they're going to call them date movies. And so hang in there.
That's great. Yes. Comic books have changed so much in the recent years, and I love them. And Batman.
Yeah, but there's a price to be paid. When I was growing up reading comic books, it was subversive. Because in the 50s, Frederick Wortham came out with his book, Seduction of the Innocent, that blamed the post-World War II rise of juvenile delinquency in America on comic books specifically. There were comic book burnings around America, Jersey City, St. Louis, eerily reminiscent of Nazi Germany in the 30s. And most of my friends were not permitted to read comics officially, and were not permitted to bring them into the house. So that was the climate. So it was subversive what we were doing. And I had friends that would come over to my house in order to read comics. That's what we would spend the day doing. I miss it.
It's truly hard to believe that comic books have become as loved and mainstream as they are today. It wasn't even 20 years ago that The Big Bang Theory built an entire television series off of the premise that comic book lovers were nothing but nerds who couldn't get a date. Today, comic books and the stories and characters that they feature are the most profitable stories in entertainment, and it wouldn't be overstating things to say that a big reason for that is Michael Uslan. I want to thank Michael for joining us this week on Tatooine Sons. If you love comics and superhero movies or Hollywood, which if you're listening to this podcast, you do, pick up Batman's Batman, a memoir from Hollywood, the land of Bilk and money, and the previous book in this story, The Boy Who Loved Batman, a memoir. Honestly, these books are almost impossible to put down once you start reading them. And also thank you for listening to Tatooine Sons of Pop Culture podcast. If you enjoyed BB Nate's interview, please take a moment to rate and review the show on your podcast app of choice, and then make sure you hit the follow or subscribe button on your app so you don't miss any episode. You'll get those as soon as they drop. Our next episode releases on Tuesday. We're going to talk more about Moon Knight. Promise we're going to have some more Star Wars in there, and hopefully we'll share some of our thoughts on Morbius if Sam ever gets to go see it. Anyway, make sure you follow the show so you don't miss an episode. While you're at it, follow Tatooine Sons on Facebook and Twitter. Share this episode with somebody else. Spread the love. That is the best way that you can help our show grow, and for you to say thank you for what we put out every single week. I think that's going to do it for today. There's only one thing left to say.
May the Force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Joy, please.
Yep, yep.